Welcome back to the Champion's Mind. I'm your host, Nirra Fields. And if you ever found yourself stuck in a job, a dream, or a life you once wanted but now feels off, this episode is for you. We're talking about something we don't talk about enough: pivoting. Change is scary, quitting can feel like failure, but sometimes letting go of the thing you thought you wanted is the most courageous and necessary move you can make. Today, I'm sharing my own story of pivoting, a mindset shift that helped me through it, and how to know when it's time to let go and reroute your past. There was a time in my life where I felt like I didn't enjoy what I was doing. I had this vision for my life that I envisioned, but I was in the moment of it and realizing that what I thought would bring me joy didn't bring me joy. And the moments that I had to put in to get the progress and get the outcomes that I wanted, it just wasn't worth it to me anymore. And this specific time I was in my professional career. It was probably my third year overseas in Turkey playing professional basketball. And I was playing for a team, and I started to realize that it was really hard to get out of bed, to go to practice, to go to games. Games were the things that I had the most joy, to be able to compete at a high level, to challenge myself, and to show everybody, including myself, all the progress that I had been making by putting the hard work in. But even that was feeling really hard to do. I was just in this place where I was living my dream. I was in a place where I envisioned my life to be, but it just didn't feel fulfilling. It felt very stagnant, and it felt like I was just content in this place where every day felt hard to get up, go to the gym, and even go to games. And it just wasn't as fun as I thought it was, or it was in the previous year. So one day I just sat down with myself and I was just like, why do I feel this way? And I realized that I was staying in that situation because it was very, very comfortable, but also I was staying in it because I was fearful. I didn't know what I would do beyond my sport. I have been doing it for 10 plus years, my entire life. I worked day in and day out to get better and be the best I can be. And I was at that place where I was. But the reality of it is I wasn't happy. I wasn't fulfilled. And I was too scared to leave or change or make any type of move outside of the sport I was in at the moment. A mindset shift that allowed me to get to a place where I did take a courageous act of doing something different than what I've done my entire life was the growth mindset set I had. So one thing that allowed me to be able to shift and make changes necessary to get to a place where I wasn't stagnant in my career anymore, and to make a move that was scary, that took a lot of courage, and that ultimately was uncertain was my growth mindset. I value growth. I value change. I value being challenged in ways that are very uncomfortable. So what I did was I assessed my current situation. I looked at it and I saw that although I was doing really well, it was really easy for me to do my job. I felt like the one thing that was missing that was enabling me to stay in that situation was I didn't feel challenged, nor did I feel like I was growing. And once I came to a place where I was able to understand that I wasn't being challenged in ways that I needed to in my current career, that allowed me to take a very courageous act of leaving my sport and finding something that would allow me to grow and also push me and challenge me in ways that my current situation wasn't. So I really want you to reflect on this question. Are you staying because it's working or because you're afraid to change? Really think about that and let that guide you towards the answers you need to be able to make a decision where you either figure out how to pivot or you use that situation as a way to push you to grow in ways that you didn't understand or see coming in the future. So how to know when it's time to pivot? Before you make the leap, you need clarity. For my specific situation, I needed first to have awareness. So if you're in your current situation and you're contemplating whether you need to pivot, you first need to be aware of how you're approaching each and every day. I didn't understand personally in my own personal experience that every day that I was walking out the door, going to practice, in practice, going to game, that I was just going through the motion. I had this thing where it was so hard to get out of bed, to go to practice, to be in practice. I was literally counting down the seconds to when we could leave practice. And then when I got home, I felt all of this relief. And I just felt like this weight lifted on my shoulder. Even going into games where I had the most joy and I had the most fun because I felt like I can just exemplify my competitiveness, that also didn't bring me joy. And it was really hard to go to games. I was just on the bench, so detached from the moment, not present in the moment like I usually was. And those were all signs that were an indicator that I needed to pivot or change my circumstances. So, how I evaluated this particular pivot was I looked at the full picture of the current circumstance I was in that moment. So, this was 2 years ago. I was in Turkey playing basketball at the height of my career, having so much success, just came off an Olympic year, and I just wasn't happy. That was the first thing. So the first thing that I evaluated was my happiness. Do I love the process? And I knew that was a no. I asked myself that first question. And then two, one thing that's very valuable to me is being able to be challenged, to grow, and to push myself to new heights. And once I evaluated that in terms of that circumstance, I knew that I wasn't being challenged. I knew that I wasn't growing. I knew that I got to a place where I was super content and just so comfortable in the career I had built that I felt like I was just being stagnant. So once I identified if it was in alignment with my value, or even if I just had the joy of doing it each and every day, and those two answers were no, I knew I needed to make a pivot. So once I identified two of the things that were most valuable to me, and I knew that they weren't in alignment with my values or just my pure enjoyment of doing it each and every day, I knew that one thing I also needed to look at was the fear of making a change. Because it's one thing to identify why you're in a situation and if it aligns with your values or if it's something that brings you joy. It's another thing to understand that sometimes it's all of those things, but also combined in that is fear. So for me to take a courageous step, I needed to nullify the fear. And for me specifically, it was creating a vision, it was creating a plan that would allow me to take this big step outside of my comfort zone, outside of a place where I felt like there was certainty, and to have full faith in that. And that allowed the fear of me leaving the sport that I dedicated my life to be less intense with the plan that I had created for myself, knowing that once I created this plan and took action on it, that everything else would work out. So I really want to encourage everybody. Clarity doesn't come from waiting. It comes from checking in with yourself regularly. When you're in this situation, it's really critical that you check in with yourself. How are you feeling? How are you showing up each and every day? Is this something you want to do? Do you have motivation to push yourself and get better each and every day? Having those regular checkups will allow you to have more awareness around a situation that requires you to stay or for you to pivot. A big mistake that I made in getting myself to a place where I needed to pivot was I was chasing money over meaning. And sometimes it got me to a place where, yes, I had a lot of money in my bank account and it was nice to see the big checks, but I really had no fulfillment or meaning in the things I was doing each and every day. My teammates I was connecting with each and every day, my coaches who I was connecting with each and every day, that didn't have any meaning to me because I had chose a situation based off of money, and that was the wrong currency. Because I was in a place where I was valuing money over building connections with my family and my friendship and sacrificing that in pursuit of my dreams, I started to realize that I didn't have any fulfillment. I chose a team that paid me the most, but I didn't really have great connection with the team. We didn't have a great coach. We had everything we wanted, but the relationships that were within that organization weren't really good, and I was sacrificing that. Also, I lived in another country. I wasn't able to be with my family or my friends, and it was all in pursuit of a dream and specifically money that allowed me to sacrifice these relationships. And I realized that that was also weighing on me. It was also making me feel like I was not in a place that I needed to be, and I needed to pivot because I truly wasn't fulfilled. Now that I look back on my career and I see all the teams I played for and all the countries I played in, and I look back on the best moments I had, I can by far say that when I came out of retirement, I had retired for 2 years prior to COVID, and I came out of retirement to play basketball again because I just redefined what success was for me, and I found my love for basketball again. I had to start at a place where I was on a lower team and I was making the least money I ever made in my basketball career, but it also ended up being one of the best experiences I had because I went into that team not making the most I had ever made, but going into this team where we had built a sisterhood. Every day I went to practice happy. I went to practice super energized and full of excitement because I was so dedicated to the people around me. We had built really great relationships off the court, and we did a lot of things that helped us be better on the court, where we just spent time with each other, got to know each other. We'd go to each other's houses and really just spend that quality time, which is something that means everything to me. And I can vividly remember that that was the best experience I had. And it didn't even involve me making the most money I ever made. And that's when I realized that the one thing I value is relationships, that although the money is important, that relationships come first, and I should make my choices based off that. I really want you guys to reflect on this question. What currency are you chasing right now? And is it fulfilling? So let's dive into how to plan a pivot that feels right. You don't have to leap blind. You can pivot with strategy. So what I did to plan my pivot and my strategy out of that specific situation was that I know the one thing that I was fearful of was going to a place where I felt like I didn't know was certain. I didn't know if I was going to make money to fund my lifestyle. So one thing that was holding me back was the fear I had around money. And the way I planned for that was I told myself, this is how much I need to be able to pay for all my expenses when I do leave basketball. So I had a specific number in mind. And for me specifically, I needed to save $100,000 in my savings account to feel very confident in leaving my current career as an athlete and go into something else and give me time to explore. I knew that if I had $100,000, I'd be able to, one, have multiple years where even if I didn't make a dime, I still have enough money in my savings account to pay for everything I needed in terms of expenses, being able to find a car, being able to find an apartment. And that gave me more freedom to plan my pivot in a way that I felt very confident. So during the time that I wasn't on the court or playing game, I started to make a list of all the things that I was interested in. I knew that beyond basketball, I was very interested in business, and that was something I wanted to do when I retired. So I started to talk to people in different industries. I had a really good interest in life coaching. So I had a life coach, and I was talking to her about the business aspect of it, like what her day-to-day was. How does she market her business and services? What she needed to do on a day-to-day basis, how much she was making. And I just started to reach out to people on LinkedIn that I thought that their career was super something of interest to me. And I started to connect with them and ask them questions to get a feel of what I would do when I did pivot. Another thing I did was I started just experimenting with a career coach. I started to book these appointments where I would go and talk to a career coach about potential paths I can take in the business industry. She gave me a lot of exercises to do that allowed me to get more clarity on what I would want to do beyond basketball. And that also was very helpful, just talking to her, getting a clear vision of what I wanted to do and having step-by-step processes to implement that once I did quit basketball also gave me a lot of confidence in being able to pivot. So I want to reiterate that pivots don't always mean quitting. They can mean reframing or repositioning. I knew that I still wanted to be competitive. I knew I still wanted to be in a performance-based industry. So it wasn't about quitting what I was doing, but just repositioning and retransitioning into something that I felt were things that I loved as an athlete, such as performing at a high level and being able to be challenged on a regular basis. And I knew that by doing that in a different environment, that I wasn't quitting, but I was just redesigning how that picture might look like for me in that season of time. So I want to challenge you guys with this question. What would a micro pivot look like for you this week? It could be anything. Just really assess what that would look like. So just for a recap, pivoting is not quitting. It's honoring the fact that you've outgrown something and it's time to change. I want to challenge you guys before you leave. Take 10 minutes today to write down what's one area of my life I'm forcing that might need a pivot. I want to invite you guys to DM me with your thoughts and share this episode with somebody navigating change. And as always, your mindset is your power. Use it. Peace.